Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here in the organization Reinvention Future of Work track. I hope if you had a lunch, and if you happen to be in European time zone, I hope you had a good lunch. If you are in the other side of the pond, I hope you had your good morning coffee. And if you happen to be in somewhere in Asia Pacific, Australia region, I hope you had a good dinner. Thank you so much for all of you for tuning in and dialing in for this exciting session. And what I'm most hopeful for is that we're going to take away some really good discussions and some good ideas from the speakers and the panelists in the next 1.5 hours. So let's just start with a quick, short welcome. This is me. I'm the partner head of content here at the HR Congress. If you're not connected yet, please just scan this QR code, look me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you, learn from you, and continue the conversation even after this conference concludes. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our partner, Globalization Partners. Globalization Partners is the company supporting this track and helping us to unwrap what future of work looks like. So thank you, Globalization Partners, for making this track and this event possible. Please do tweet with us, share some content, some ideas if you find something interesting and worthwhile sharing using the hashtag HR Congress 2022. The track title, Organization Reinvention Future of Work. And of course, we're going to explore a little bit what are the new shiny technology trends and how it's going to affect the way we work. But it's long proven that robots and technology is not going to take away jobs. It certainly will reshuffle how we work. But the more we use technology, it's proven over and over again in many times in history, the more human jobs will be created, but we are going to work differently. So the question is, how are we going to work differently? Not just necessarily in the far away in the future, but even in the near future, even today, how work is changing, how are we balancing work and life, when are we realizing that work-life balance, it's not really the right way to look at it as work is a significant part of life. It's not like in a two different equation of the scale. So work is part of life. Therefore, we need to create work environment, work structure where we offer meaning and to fulfillment even during at work. And work is not something which to be scared of or to be on the wrong side of the scale. And it's all about work. When it comes to work, smart companies already empowered. We need to enable, we need to empower people, we need to enhance the work surrounding. And of course, engagement, employee experience is certainly ranks really, really high on every HR, every business leader's agenda. So how can we free up people? How can we offer freedom at work where people can find true meaning and can fulfill their own personal aspirations, of course, whilst in the meantime offering value and creating value to the organizations. And it does require HR leaders and business leaders alike together probably to rethink a little bit and question some of our deepest paradigms and rethink how we work. What is organization? How networks of relations work and operate in organizations, questions some of our deepest beliefs. And the conversation needs to move from profit to purpose, from bureaucracy to humanocracy, from domination to dialogue, and create true activists in our organizations. And that, of course, comes together with a set of new leadership challenges because we need to get rid of the ego and work towards a more inclusive leadership. Our generation created a lot of problems in the workplace, and a new generation entering the workforce, they certainly question whether we can able to offer them the new work realities, what they are seeking. But certainly, as Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So I'm hopeful that in the next 90 minutes, this session will offer you some sort of a think tank, some sort of an opportunity to start thinking differently when it comes to work and reimagine the future together. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce our track, what we shall be covering. I'm grateful from the bottom of my heart for the amazing panel of speakers that's joining and supporting us during this track, starting with Andrea, Head of People Experience in Europe at NOKIA. This will be followed by a case presentation, Markus Graf, VP of Global Head of Talent at NOVARTIS. Then we shall have an amazing panel discussion looking at what is the right challenges and opportunities of remote and hybrid working when talent is anywhere. So we have Birgit, Maillefaud, the head of HR advisor and formerly heading HR at Logitech, at Coty and P&G, and Sergio Caredda is Senior HR Director, Global Function at Campari. So looking forward to this exciting panel discussion as well. And what's on our agenda? Andrea will be here with us in a moment, kicking off this session with a big picture presentation. Future of Work is the future of world. This will be followed by a case study by Markus Graf, VP of Global Talent at NOVARTIS, that innovation starts with the right experience. Isn't it what we all want? More innovative organizations and innovative circumstances for people to thrive. And then we stop for the panel discussion, as I mentioned, and following up with a solution demo. Let's see how Globalization Partner can help you to build a truly global workforce. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Andrea on my virtual stage. It's good to have you here, Andy. The virtual stage is now yours.
Thank you very much. So I brought here a topic which is very much echoed in what Mihai was talking about so far. So the future of the work is the future of the work. And although I would like to first talk about a case study and what we have done already at NOKIA, I also decided to bring here a topic or two, which might be just a little bit, broadening the picture and help us think together and maybe even discuss further, especially if you have questions at the end of the presentation, what might be coming in the future and how we might address these challenges. So just very, very briefly about NOKIA, because, this company is known for a very long time. I mean, it's more than 150 years old, has an operation in 130 countries, employing more than 87,000 people, won Nobel Prizes. We are actually a technology company. And our aim is to create the technology which is helping the world act together. So we are, the ones who are behind quite a lot of technological improvements which you are seeing in the world. But what is this company standing for? So we are really seeing that the pressure on the planet is increasing. And we are trying to respond to climate change, to efficient use of technology, and also reusing the world's resources. We also can see that the productivity is stalling, so we are rethinking how to bring the digital and the physical world closer to each other. And also, we would like to help to provide equal opportunities all over the world with, helping to develop healthcare, education, connect the people through the technology with each other. And before going into the topic I brought today, I also very briefly just would like to talk about my role at NOKIA, because 2 years ago, the company decided to change a little bit of the structure of the people organization. So it's not an HR organization anymore, it's a people organization, putting the people into the heart of everything what we are doing. And therefore, we decided to change the structure, how we are operating currently, meaning that the people direction of the people organization is mainly responsible for the strategy and the direction this organization is going and the whole company is going. People services is responsible for developing a portfolio of services and digital solutions, analytics, which are for the business groups and the corporate functions to use. And the people and places organization is really responsible for the real estate and the workplace design. And I'm mentioning them because they are also going to be extremely, important in this process and designing the future of work. While the people experience organization, I'm part of it, is bringing the in-person and digital experiences closer to each other, and also, to the people. We are also responsible for health and safety and the well-being of our people, as well as industrial relations. I'm heading the Europe region with 40 countries, and also part of my team is responsible for some global program rollout. So today, I brought here the topic that the future of work is hybrid. In 2021, actually, our conversation started actually earlier than 2021. It was already during the pandemic, because Nokia has always been a global-minded company, thinking about, you know, how we might organize ourselves, how global teams can operate with each other, and therefore it wasn't such a big shock for us, I would say, that we needed to start working from home. We already had the infrastructure, which obviously needed to develop further, but that wasn't entirely new for us. Still, you know, we had a lot of conversation that when the world is starting to open up, how we are going to structure our organization and what we are going to do about. And at the time, we decided to go for hybrid, and we decided to define what hybrid is going to mean for us. Obviously, before going into this discussion, we needed to evaluate the pros and cons. But I think the most important message was that the time is precious. And actually what we learned during this pandemic is that people appreciated the time they were able to spend with their families, the time that you know, I'm a mom. I was really appreciating that I had a chance to go and pick up my daughter from school when the school was open. So it actually made the whole environment and the whole business is helping to be integrated with our everyday life. So we were actually, before starting to design a program, decided to evaluate the benefits, the pros and the cons of this, and decided, or actually realized that introducing a hybrid working is not only a benefit for the person itself, but it's also actually in line with what we would like to achieve. So we can actually lower the carbon footprint, or you know, enhance diversity and dual careers. We also are able to tap into a greater pool of talent in the future if we are going for the hybrid solution. Of course, we also appreciated there are challenges of going hybrid, like you know, the virtual communication is not as efficient sometimes than the face-to-face. So we needed to rethink how we are using technology. And sometimes the written communication takes much longer than before. Therefore, for example, during the COVID time, we have seen an increased use of Teams, which are, you know, just very short and brisk messages. And I'm sure that many of you were also experiencing the same. But we also realized that maybe the trust is harder to build. You know, there are proximity biases, which we needed to think how to overcome. And then we also needed to think about, because hybrid means very, very different in many places, you know, how we really would like to go about. And at the time, we also went through a cultural change, meaning that we decided to empower more our people at work. Our cultural values are open, fearless, and empowered. And this empowerment was very, very important for us. So we decided in the new design to give more choice around how our people are working, meaning that actually there is a free choice and an agreement between the line manager and the employee, how they want to work. So they can actually choose from going into the office 5 days a week up until working from home 5 days a week, whatever they want. There can also be an agreement about, you know, the working hours. Do you need to leave for 2 hours to organize something and then come back and continue? This is again something which we decided that the line managers and the employees are actually much better suited to decide on than deciding it on the corporate level. This, of course, gave a greater responsibility also for the employees and also the line managers. But we were listening to our employees. We were asking this question: how do you really want to work? What is really which you would like to, see when we are designing such a program? How many days you, in average, would like to come to the office? Why would you want to come to the office? And collaboration is rated as a most important reason to come to the office, for example. We also asked, what are the activities which you would like to do in the office? Because this is going to influence the work, how we are doing the work in the future, and how we are going to design the policies later on. So we also have seen, which you probably also have seen in your companies, that the on-site overall individual work really decreased. So you don't want to sit necessarily at the table and just do your individual work, but you want to collaborate, you want to meet, you want to have this water cooler moments when you are discussing something. So this is something which we decided to cater for. So when designing this program, we really need to rethink 4 elements: is the leadership and the culture, which I mentioned. Also, how we are going to ensure the well-being of our people, because being away from the office, it's much harder to spot, how the employees are doing on an individual basis. We needed to define the policies which are going to govern this. And also, we needed to think about the workplace design itself, making sure that we are providing a stimulating working environment for our employees. So I know that this is a busy slide, but I think one of the most important part of this program was really the mindset change. So what I mentioned, that everyone needed to take the responsibility, that they define and they are going to decide how they are going to work together in the future. So the value and the importance of the line managers and the managers and how they are connecting with their employees really increased. We were suggesting them to have a meeting with their team members about the good day at work, understanding whether they might have any challenges which are making it harder for them to work from home. We also encouraged them to do that because we, for example, identified that the younger generation of colleagues really appreciated the in-office presence because they really liked working with each other on a regular basis. And we needed to ensure that we are always having enough managers around for them to be able to connect with them. But these were not defined very much on the corporate level. This is something which we allowed teams to do it together. Of course, the coaching and the mentoring culture is also very, very important at the firm because this is one of the reasons why this program is so successful. You might have a chance or will have a chance to listen to my colleague, Borvala Mornar, who is talking about the coaching and mentoring culture we established at NOKIA. And this is so much embedded into the organization. We are encouraging every leader to go through such a training to ensure that we are able to help also the employees to navigate in this new world. Yes. The other element which I mentioned is the well-being. So besides very extensive well-being programs, we are also providing personal support services to our employees because we understand the current situation is very, very volatile. The world is changing, ever changing. There is a lot of uncertainty out there, and we need to make sure that our employees are fine. Is it an area where we can still improve? Yes. It's very, very hard to ensure that we are, paying attention to everyone, but we are trying our best. So besides the programs which are currently introduced, we are always thinking about new solutions how to measure the employee well-being going forward. So we, for example, recently found that the pulse surveys and the annual NOKIA heartbeat survey, which we are using, is probably not enough. So right now we are in a testing phase of an application where you would be able to just register your current mood of the day and how you feel, what might be influencing you. And of course, there is going to be an aggregated report sent regularly to your line manager about it without, individual information. But also, it's going to be a very good feedback for you as an individual to understand, what might be influencing your well-being and how you might feel during the work or in a month. Is there anything which is impacting you on a regular basis? So our aim was really to work from different locations, but build a global team which is able to act together. And and this is something which we were trying to introduce at NOKIA. So it doesn't matter whether you are sitting in an office setup, whether you are sitting at home. This is something which we understand, and it's not really influencing the way you are seen at work. And I also mentioned to you that people and places is, for example, very, very important for us because we are working very closely in designing together the future of the offices. And we are currently planning and working with far more collaboration places than ever before. And those collaboration places really need to be very optimally designed to be able to cater for this personal meetings. Okay. But what might be coming in the future, which is helping us to collaborate? I don't know whether you already heard, I'm sure you might have heard about the HR 4.0, which is about we are shaping people's strategies in the fourth industrial revolution. This is an industrial revolution which is really blurring the lines between people and technology. And in HR, we really need to rethink how we're going to work, and not just in HR, but in general in the businesses as well, how we are producing value, which is going to impact the economy. And also in the society, if the line between digital and physical is blurring and disappearing, how we are going to support the new environment, how we are going to support the employees in the future in this. Because, this is that digital revolution, and this is also a human revolution. Therefore, if you let me just to quote here someone, Lena Nair, who was a former chief HR officer at Unilever, who said, as HR leaders, we play a pivotal role in helping to lead our organization to a new future of work. And one that has the potential to be more inclusive, more purposeful, and deliver a positive impact to our people and customers. And this is why it is such a good time to rethink how we are doing HR. So with this quote, I would like to ask you a question, because this is a topic quite a lot of companies and people are currently talking about, and something which is out there for some more time now. Ever since the adoption of AI and automation is becoming more mainstream, it's the impact of the technology is really increasing exponentially. And organizations are continuously looking to integrate new technologies into their existing processes. And I'm sure that you are, doing the same. But what does the metaverse even mean? I think that's really a question, and what kind of opportunities it has for HR and for our work. So the metaverse actually itself doesn't really refer to a specific technology, but it's rather a shift in a way how we are interacting with technology. And what is so transformational of the metaverse is that it's a new part of it's a new version of the current web we are using. So it's an enhanced version of the social networking which we are using currently. And in our profession, this is probably something which we need to think about how to utilize in the future. So I just mentioned that this is really an enhanced way of how we do social networking currently. And there are going to be different ways of using it in the future. So have you ever played with any of these games? I mean, I'm having a daughter who is a big fan of Roblox. So I do have an avatar in Roblox and I need to play in there time to time. It's an interesting experience. Not that weird, I have to say. It's actually quite nice. You can get used to it, that you are dressing up your avatar, that you are doing all sorts of fun things with your avatar, and especially if you are working with or playing with someone else, it can be a fun activity. But this is something which is currently, we experience as a game, and maybe later on, it's going to really influence how we work. So what we need to know about the metaverse is that it's currently yet not in a phase that it is heavily influencing, because the goggles are quite heavy yet. The technology is not there yet, which would support us very, very easily to go into the metaverse and experience that. But this technology is developing rapidly. So the expectation is that by 2030, it will start to transform our industries. And, it's only 7-8 years to go. So we might want to think about it on time. Yeah, let me just go to the next one. So we were reviewing actually together with Gartner what kind of industries are going to be affected by the metaverse, and where do we see the enterprise use cases the most when thinking about the metaverse. For example, training is the first one. I think meetings and events, meaning the collaboration. So we already have at NOKIA a few teams which are on a regular basis meeting as avatars in a meeting room. And they are having a slightly different experience in this meeting than just meeting on Teams and networking on Teams. Of course, marketing, industrial use cases, and also leisure are there. But if we are thinking about this, then the first two use cases are very much actually influencing our industry. For example, employee onboarding can be very much affected, especially if you think about hiring talents globally. So you might be able to provide an onboarding experience into one of the sites when you hire someone globally, and maybe the first time you're going to meet in person is only going to happen in a few months' time. The metaverse will also make the group collaborations and conversation much more hands-on. It's going to bring people closer together, those who are not necessarily are going to have the chance to meet face-to-face. So maybe just, and maybe one use case we are having currently at NOKIA, which is very, very useful. We have a training certification for some of the maintenance teams, and they can do the training in a much, much safer environment, learning about the new tools. and learning about how to maintain some of the network failures, or how to set up some of the tools, which would require us to send these people to sites and do the training in a normal setup to do it on spot. But because we have this virtual environment where they can be trained and they can actually take the exam as well virtually, therefore we can speed up the training certification this way, and we can actually react much, much quicker to some of these challenges currently. And maybe just finishing off my presentation before opening it up for you for further question. In my view, the hybrid is here to stay. And as I mentioned also earlier, the line between the digital and the physical world is becoming even more blurred. And we in HR need to think about how to utilize and ensure that we find the right balance when creating the employee experience.
Thanks so much. Brilliant session. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple of minutes for questions. So if you have some questions, put in the chat box, put in Q&A. I certainly have a couple of questions myself, and let me kick off. When we talk about anticipating the future now, especially in a company like who thrives on innovation, NOKIA, how do you predict what future skills you will need in the future, and how do you make your workforce ready, anticipating future capabilities?
This is actually something we are already working on. We are doing quite a lot of researches. One thing what we realized is that especially if we are just talking about HR, so staying here and not necessarily trying to address the whole workforce, digital skills are going to become extremely important, that's for sure. So almost everyone needs to understand at least the basics of digital. But we also see an importance of the human skills. So I think we're going to have roles where the digital is going to be extremely important. We might see roles in HR which are far more almost like IT, automation, AI, robotics knowledge. But at the same time, we also see, especially in the supporting of the managers, the social skills, the skills which are helping to communicate better with each other, the skills which are more supportive, which are helping the evaluations of the employees increasing. So I think, as I mentioned, this is the balance which we will need to find in the future. But this is an area where we need to spend time and energy on to anticipate what might be coming. And we might not be able to prepare for everything, but I think what we can do, we can see the next 2 to 3 steps, and then on the way re-evaluate whether it was the right one, and then doing it further.
Indeed, constant iteration, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. In fact, it was before the pandemic when we had a Digital Asia conference, and it was said very wisely that it's not AI going to replace the job of HR, but it is the HR professionals with skills and understanding of HR and technology and digital will replace that time current HR professionals. So whether you like it or not, you need to swim with the current, and you need to upgrade your skills and capabilities to support, now, God forbid, drive the business forward. Questions are pouring in, and it's one that I also wanted to ask about. Louis asking, how did you address challenges from leadership against hybrid working?
You know, the first challenge, I was actually thinking what was one of our first challenge, and this was about leadership, because when you from one day to another give the opportunity to decide what you would, just decide, it's your responsibility, decide how you want to do it, and decide as a leader how you're going to manage it. I think that was a big challenge for us, for everyone to understand that this is your decision, that you are empowered to take this decision. We also run a lot of sessions with leaders, a lot of discussions with leaders, not just for them to understand the how the process works, because explaining the process is the easy part. Explaining that how you might support your employees further is the harder part. It's something where we were, developing online resources, or we already had online resources, but just we needed to remind the leaders how to use them again. And also we were, having one-on-one conversation with those who were very much more in need and wanted to understand it better.
And of course, it connects to very nicely to the question of Xian. Hi, Xian. Good to have you here, Xian, in the audience. You mentioned the importance of mindset, and what are you practically doing to help people to change the mindset, which is probably the hardest thing to do, isn't it?
I think that's kind of part of my previous. We had the other conference and the presentation of our cultural change of open, fearless, and empowered. And it is also part of that. So I cannot say that this is separated from the general things which we are doing. We are trying to ensure that people, and we are having constant programs around this, or leaders are talking about this on a regular basis. It's it starts to, or it's already embedded in our culture, that we went through this shift, and that the leaders will need to support the employees also going forward. The HR teams are helping on an ongoing basis. We just renewed our onboarding program for the new leaders, where we are trying to teach even more people skills for them to be able to face all of the new challenges.
Interesting question. And last question. We still have time, so it's one last question. I'm interested in your view on that.
Okay.
Alexander Muller is asking, will the value proposition of HR change fundamentally in your view, moving away from the very old and good, old and tested, right people with the right skills at the right time, at the right place, at the right price? Any best guess? So how will the HR value proposition change in this equation?
It's an interesting question. I think the role of HR and the value of HR is increasing, in my view. So we are facing an ever diverse workforce. We need to support all the leaders going forward to be able to focus on their roles. It's nothing new, I would say, because it has been there already before, but we need to help them to rethink how we deliver work, and how they are going to be able to carry out the work with the right resources at the right time, at the right place, going forward.
So the value proposition is the same, but of course we need to consider the context is different, right? So it's
different. It's definitely different.
Everything is changing so rapidly around us.
Exactly.
Andrea, thank you so much for being here with us today. We need to, unfortunately, time is up, but there are still a few more questions. So if you still will be here for the panelists. You just hang around and put your answers in the chat box. That would be very much appreciated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite to our virtual stage Markus Graf. Markus, the VP Global Head of Talent at Novartis. And continuing the journey on innovation, we shall be learning how innovation starts with the right experience at work.
I'm so delighted to be here today. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to engage with the audience today. I will talk about innovation starts with the right experience and at work, with an example at Novartis, where I'm the Vice President of Talent, as you just mentioned. So thanks so much for having me. Let's jump in. What is Novartis? Like, Novartis is a healthcare company, a purpose-driven healthcare company, and our ambition is to reimagine medicine to improve and extend people's lives. Think of people suffering from cancer, multiple sclerosis, and the like. And we're in the business of really coming up with new medicine, with new treatment to improve and extend their life. And as you can imagine, this means also we need to come up with new innovation, new product to really overcome some of these diseases. So when you think about the company, just one slide, it's roughly 50 billion company, 155 countries we operate in, and we serve more than 700 million patients around the world. with more than 100,000 employees to really alleviate some of society's greatest disease burdens. We invest roughly 10 billion into research and development. And when we talk about innovation, of course, research and development is at the forefront of driving innovation. But as a company, we do not only want to innovate in research and development, new products, but we also innovate new ways of working as we think about how we can go to market, but also as we think about work in finance or the HR function. We want to really drive innovation across the business. And I think that's certainly something that we see being also requested by our CEO, Vas, who is also an innovator at heart. When you think about the business, when you think about the industry, as I mentioned, it's really about new possibilities in a new era of medicine, where we have completely new ways of action, how you can really address some of the hardest diseases that you can possibly think of, such as cancer or diseases in the field of immunology. We really want to drive faster decision-making in an organization that's really centered around being inspired, curious, and embossed. And you may have heard about the culture journey at NOVARTIS before. And again, when you think about innovation and creating the right experience, the culture needs to be also really much centered around this notion of creating an environment where innovation can happen, where people feel psychologically safe to come up with new ideas, and also some ideas that have been unheard of. Because if we want to come up with new medicine, of course, we need to challenge status quo and come up with new solutions. And that's happening in the context of launching new medicines, but also beyond, so that we really deliver on the notion of reaching twice as many patients, twice as fast. So I think that's where you really see the global nature of the business, but also very much in a changing industry to what we also heard before. When you think about how we drive and foster this innovation, I think for me, it always comes back to the strategy. And the strategy is a starting point also for the work that we do in the HR function and also in the talent work. So when you look at the 5 priorities, I feel humbled to work really in an organization that puts people first, and unleashing the power of our people is one of the priorities of the company. So when you look into the HR strategy, there's a really strong focus on culture, talent, and also driving transformation. So 3 very clear priorities that guide us in terms of where to focus and how can we create an experience for people around the world so they can unleash their power and really achieve the extraordinary, coming up with extraordinary innovation with new medicine, but also new ways of working. When I think about this environment where the innovation needs to happen, I think there's 6 core themes, core trends that really influence how we think about the strategy and all the work that we do in talent management. One is around skills. Skills, not jobs, are really becoming the new currency of talent management and allow for even much more of a data-driven approach to drive strategy. I think we all appreciate and acknowledge that the future of work has arrived. We certainly see that there is major transformation when people work, where people work, how they work, but also what they do and who is the workforce, which is kind of the stepping stone towards the workforce itself. But we have a new definition of workforce, expanding our current understanding to think about gig workers, think about much more external workers. The whole automation, Michali, to your point earlier on AI, comes up here as well. A notion around agility, jobs being redefined towards much more like a project-based, agile setup, which we will also cover later. There's clear and strong commitment requested, I think, by the workforce, but also prospective employees towards the ESG agenda, including diversity, equity, and inclusion elements that are really differentiating factors to win talent in the marketplace. And then the notion around experience really being front and center, and also very much also expected in a changing workforce with changing dynamics. Not only people from Generation Z will require a better experience, but I think that's certainly true across the entire workforce and other generations as well. So when I think about what needs to shift, what is the experience that is required and also expected, then I think about these few dimensions. I think, broadly speaking, coming from a more like a traditional setup, people work from 9 in the morning until 5 in the evening to working much more flexibly. People deciding when they want to work is certainly expected. Working traditionally on site 5 days a week, as I did, as many of you possibly did 5-10 years ago, I think is certainly replaced now by working hybrid. Working, for example, in my case, 3 days, 4 days a week in the office, but also 1 or 2 days from home, so that I can also balance other commitments with family. Organizing the work around jobs and having them in a job architecture was the primary criteria how we organized ourselves. And I think we move much more now towards really thinking about what skills are required to do elements of work. We focused historically a lot on activity and the work. And I think moving forward, it's much more about the outcomes and the impact that is actually created and ultimately what contributes towards the delivery against the business strategy. And in this specific case here at NOVARTIS, this is about really coming up with new and better medicine for patients. Focusing on learning instead of focusing on knowing. Up and out career path towards creating own career path, which can also mean not only making side steps, but also being willing once in a while to make a small step back, to make 2 steps ahead. So I think that's certainly something that we see much more happening. And historically, having managers driving development to much more associates driven development, I think that's the expected environment, the expected experience. Not everything of it will be completely brand new and unheard of, but I think we still have seen in our case, but possibly also in your environments, that this journey takes a while, this shift takes a while, this doesn't happen overnight. And so that's more of a longer term journey over 5 to 7 years until you're really fully there. I would say we have been more progressed in some elements than others, but also happy to look into more questions possibly later. So as we think about the talent strategy, as we think about the experience we want to create, we really summarize this in a talent strategy with 5 big bets, all with the focus of really ensuring that the company has the talent, skills, and capabilities to deliver the business strategy by placing 5 big bets. And I walk you through those, but this is really front and center, really ensuring that the company has the talent, skills, and capabilities to deliver on the business strategy, in this case, reimagining medicine for patients. So when you look at the strategy, these big bets include a focus on precision talent, which is about the roles that really create disproportionate value for the company. And we talk about 9.2 billion incremental sales. And let's not only think about the dollars, the sales, but also think about all the medicine that will be accessible to people around the world to really treat them and hopefully address their diseases in the best way possible. Second focus is around leaders of the future. How can we assess and develop the next generation leaders and equip them for an uncertain future where they also are socially responsible in society? I think that's the second major theme. The third major theme is around talent marketplace or talent experience, where we really strive for creating personalized recommendations of opportunities for everyone to navigate their careers. And that's also going to be the focus for the remainder of the presentation today. The fourth notion is around future-ready workforce. What are the skills? And we also heard it earlier. What are the skills that we will need in the future, and how do we build, buy, borrow them? Frequently referred to as strategic workforce planning, as the world is changing around us so rapidly. As we want to innovate new medicine, we need to also think about the next generation of skills, so to say, to really also develop this next generation of medicine. In this case, we talk, for example, about nuclear cell and gene therapies and their like. So really brand new ways to tackle diseases, and they require new skill sets amongst our workforce. But the same is true not only in research and development, but also in commercial models, where I think historically pharma companies relied a little more on traditional sales forces with sales reps carrying, so to say, the bag to healthcare professionals, and this is now being complemented with digital ways of engagement to get access to information as need be. And the fifth notion is around talent intelligence. How can we leverage the data to really generate meaningful insights that improve the quality of our people, decisions, and actions, including using data that helps us to understand what is the required from an experience standpoint for employees to innovate and create value. It's all underpinned by technology, a skills operating system, and a lot of mindset and capability shift along the lines of what we heard before. So when you think about the experience, the talent marketplace is, in my mind, a core element to accelerate the development of people in the flow of work, and a moment that really matters to our employees. So in our specific case, we look at an end-to-end career development journey for our people so that we can really help them to grow and also unleash their full potential to achieve the extraordinary. And this is a simplified way of really thinking about 4 quadrants of elements that can make a big difference for employees. The first that start at the top left is around my potential. So really discovering what is my foundational potential objectively without too much bias in the system, but really based on solid, scientifically sound assessment instruments to understand what are my strengths and really lean into the strengths, but also being clear about what are the development opportunities so that I can mitigate them as much as possible, but also possibly then also of relying much more on other people and their strengths to complement myself. And ultimately then to increase my self-awareness and to focus my development where it makes the biggest difference, utilizing the strengths that I have developed over the years. Second piece is around my development, to really plan my development based on my aspirations, what I really want to accomplish, so that we can really tap into the strengths, but also the aspirations of our people, where they want to maximize their contributions. We consider the growth opportunities recommended to me, right? Along the lines of what I experienced with Netflix, it's always beneficial that I have a recommendation of what might be suitable in this case of Netflix, for example, series to be considered. And then in this case here for my development, what would be meaningful development opportunities for me. And I cover this one in more detail, as well as how to connect with mentors and also learn from others, where I personally think we can pick up a lot from others. My learning is around identifying interests for my own skill building, identifying the best learning resources, and then also sharing my own unique knowledge with others. So really giving back to others with what is called frequently a learning experience platform. And then number 4, creating really impact, setting big, bold objective of what I want to accomplish over 2-3 years, as well as some of the, what I would call nearer term targets of what I want to accomplish on a quarterly basis, I think matters across the full value chain when people work in research and development, where we tend to have a little bit of longer kind of planning cycles. So of course, long, big, bold objectives, but still you can break things down into what you want to accomplish on a quarterly basis. For example, seek and provide feedback via check-ins, and also receive recognition and reward for the impact being generated. So this is in a nutshell how I think about the end-to-end career and development journey, which is at the forefront for the experience for employees, and also really matters to them then ultimately to come up with new innovation. When you look into what it means actually, when you think about the talent marketplace, we really wanted to elevate the experience to the next level. So we asked our employees, what are some of their pain points? And 80% said they struggle with visibility into career opportunities in other parts of the organization. 67% said their career development really depends on their manager. And 50% said they're unaware about the future skills they need to develop. And 43% said, well, there's a lot of learning content out there. What really matters to me? So these were the needs of the employees. And I think we always need to start with the needs, wants, and dreams of our employees. And that was really the focus of how we, in a very tangible way, addressed specific needs that came up from our employees by removing the barriers between talent opportunity and future-proofing our pipeline to increase their mobility and then ultimately also modernize the employee experience. In our case, we rely on a talent marketplace. We call it talent matching talent with opportunities through personalized recommendations for everyone. And you see here on this visualization, it's technology enabled, of course, when you want to reach and create access to opportunities for all employees. It's best to use technology to really bring it to everybody around the world, and also in different languages. So you will also see the personal welcome in this example, good afternoon, Marcus. And then you see at the bottom, for example, different kinds of opportunities, being it the full-time jobs, part-time jobs, learning content, mentoring opportunities that are recommended to me based on the skills that I have already developed and also the skills and aspiration that I have for my own future. It's technology enabled by Glode, and really offers then associates to connect with mentors, to have access to experts, to also engage with peers, and also look into case studies. As I mentioned, projects are very much front and center because once in a while people want to spend a couple of hours a week on a project in another part of the organization. Many people experience seasonality. They're not fully utilized at 100% throughout the entire year. There might be peaks when they certainly maybe have like less opportunities to engage in projects, but then there might be also other moments in the year when people can engage in projects and contribute in other parts of the organization. Of course, learning off the job, open roles, understanding what are career paths and opportunities, and also what are volunteering opportunities to contribute outside of the company context. When we think about how has it landed and worked in the organization, I see in very short period of time from a global launch in April until today, we've now almost 30,000 people actively engaging. We always measure the value of the value add of how has this made a difference to our associates, and we see that we already unleashed almost 4 million extra value in addition to what we do by looking into how much, for example, time some of our colleagues spend on projects creating value in other parts of the organization. Almost 800 people found a mentor, and I think that's, in my mind, tremendously beneficial. A lot of talent people I speak to, they really would want to have mentors. They tend to struggle to find a suitable mentor, and I think that's really a game changer, that people have access to mentors. They find project opportunities, and we unlocked more than 80,000 hours in this comparably short period of time through one upskilling, agile resourcing, and knowledge management platform that we call Match in our company. What are tangible benefits in a nutshell? It includes something that's very basic, like as an HR leader, you have access to talent profiles. Historically, we relied on LinkedIn. We had like an old approach where we had 9,000 profiles in 4 years. You see, we added like, we got 9,000 profiles in a month or two because there's something in it for associates. They can share their data, they share their profile, and immediately there's something in it for them. They get recommendations of opportunities. I think this makes a big difference to associates. The agile resourcing, really getting work done, I think is a tremendous opportunity. That's, by the way, also the key selling point to managers. A lot of managers want to get a lot of work done. And so if they see an opportunity to post an opportunity and can access great resources from the organization, I think they see the benefit. They see the candidates in seconds, and then can also then tap into the really global network of the organization. And last but not least, also from a data and insights perspective, we really now understand what are the skills that our employees have. We can look into what are the skills they should have in 3 to 5 years from now, understand then the gap, and then also be much more targeted in capability building. We talked a lot about what it means also in terms of culture and mindset shift. And I want to give you 5 concrete examples, what it means for our people, for our leaders, but also for the HR function and people in the HR function. We shifted in order to really unleash the power of our people and foster innovation. We really move towards this belief that all employees have talent, and we really want to help all of them to reach their full potential. I think this makes a big difference. It is really motivating and encouraging to people that they know they're seen as having talent and they should be invested in. Historically, I think talent management in different organizations that I've seen focused a little bit more on the business needs. And I think we certainly acknowledge that talent management needs to address the business needs and at the same time also the needs of individuals. So really addressing both individuals and business needs at the same time is what we want to and do moving forward. Talent has been a little bit more siloed historically, and the mindset shift towards really understanding talent and our employees as a shared resource, I think is a major game changer. Means moving people from one part of the organization to another on a project basis. And as I mentioned before, one of the pain points was that people felt that they understand what are the opportunities in their respective part of the organization, but not necessarily in other parts of the organization. 82% of the projects now are staffed with people from another part of the organization. Could be another country, could be another function, but it really breaks down the silos that we had in the past. Talent decisions are much more data informed. We generate a lot of data, for example, on what are the skills people have. Much more transparent because all kinds of opportunities are visible and no longer only accessible to those people who are close to certain leaders. And I think also by creating this full transparency in a marketplace, much more democratic. And to really close then the loop here also for this presentation, it's really all centered around delivering a strong employee experience, an experience that really helps people to unleash their full potential, to then ultimately reimagining medicine, to contribute towards innovation, both in terms of new products, but also new ways of working. How we drive this in line with what we heard before, we certainly have a lot of storytelling, sharing what works, and then also amplifying these role models in the organization, be it specific leaders or employees who engage in this new approach moving forward. For example, we had one person on a project assignment moving to another part of the organization, supporting a little bit as a side gig, a couple of hours a week. And then through bringing a completely new perspective, they were able to unleash 4 million savings. Imagine 4 million in savings. So that was a major change, but really just helping another part of the organization offering new perspective really allowed for this incremental saving. And I think that's a story that, of course, I like to share within the organization, because I think this is just showcasing the potential and power it has to tap into people from other parts of the organization, for example, through these gig opportunities that are facilitated by the talent marketplace. Comes with capability building amongst HR leaders, business leaders, but of course also associates to really showcase them what is possible. It's less about the technology. The technology, to be honest, is super simple and user-friendly and intuitive. We'll call it consumer-grade experience, but certainly really bringing everybody along requires here and there some awareness sessions. And last but not least, in line with what I showed, some measurement to really see what works, and where there's a little bit of a need of fine-tuning. Seeing 30,000 people engaging in such a short period of time, I must say, has really exceeded my own expectations. This is what I wanted to share with you today. A concrete example, a tangible example of how to create an environment where innovation starts with the right experience at work.
Markus, that was an amazing story, and obviously it resonates really well with the audience. When did you launch your talent marketplace?
Yeah, we launched it fully in April. So this is when we had it. We had a little bit of a pilot phase to just see how it goes, what works, what doesn't before. But it started in April this year on a global scale. And I think it was like the ramp up. It was like really extraordinary because it was so much word of mouth kind of sharing of what's happening there, with accompanied with one or the other communication. But it's comparably new, but it works tremendously well, and it takes care of itself.
Fresh out of the oven, brilliant. Typical or some critical success factors along the way, obviously, to have that level of engagement with a new piece of technology in such a short period of time. What would you consider one or two tips who wish to sort of consider embark on a similar journey, or just launching a new piece of technology which is organization-wide, drastically change the way we work, the way we operate? Yeah. What would you consider some golden nuggets of critical success factors?
Yeah, but I think it certainly helps if a company prioritizes career and development of its employees. I would say that's certainly true, and that everybody in the HR function will probably agree with having some business leader buy into investing in the career development certainly is needed. And I think the other pieces then are also around the technology. It's certainly helpful if the technology is user-friendly, consumer grade, and because it includes like this AI and recommendation of opportunities. When I want to use Netflix and I love thriller, I want to have a recommendation of thrillers on Netflix and not necessarily animal movies. So choose also the right technology that is really able to offer you this experience through the technology as well, that the right opportunities are presented.
Let me just, somebody's trying to, Barry, give us Barry for a moment. Is there, for some reason, the picture is stuck. Maybe you have time for one question. And here's the one from Simon Burton. Under the big 5 bets, are you able to share what tools, methods, practices Novartis are employing to assess next generation leaders, and likewise to predict skills for your future ready workforce?
Yeah. That's a brilliant question. It's hard to capture this in 2 minutes, but in a nutshell, when it comes to assessing leaders of the future, we think about first what are the signposts, what is the potential model, and we really simplified it to really think about leaders who can navigate complexity. We believe that's certainly very much needed as the world is changing around us so much. It's about leading people to really into the future, and then also delivering impact underpinned by really living our culture. So these are the 4 elements, and then we have an approach to assess leaders depending on their current level. It's a more white glove, more in-depth assessment when it comes to the top end of the house, when you need to appoint a business leader to oversee a business and a P&L of a couple of billion. Lower levels of the organization, that's probably more technology enabled and at scale, but really creating opportunity for everybody to get a proper assessment with external partners. And when it comes to skills of the future, we use, in terms of understanding what we have as is today, the talent marketplace powered by Globalization. And when it comes to what skills we need in the future, we work with external partners to really understand what skills and jobs are more frequently posted. So we scrape, so to say, all information from job postings and from other sources to understand what jobs become more important. We have a lens on what happens at some of our competitors. We have a lens of what happens in some of the tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google to really understand what's the market moving. And this gives us a directional picture where things are headed to. And then we have a conversation in management based on these data points to really have then the discussion of what do we need in the future to win in the marketplace. That's in a nutshell what we do. Happy to answer more questions here in the chat, but also possibly on LinkedIn later.
Thank you so much, Markus. And that question alone, that could have been a standalone presentation. I mean, it's such a massive topic. Thank you so much for being here with us. And ladies and gentlemen, now we're moving on to the last part of this track, the panel discussion. I'd like to invite our panelists, Birgit Maillefaud, Sergio, Caredda, Andrea, that's coming on the panel. And the panel will be moderated by Barry Rudden from Globalization Partners. So you can take it away.
Thanks, Mihaly. So yeah, my name is Barry Rudden. I am a Global Third-Party Director with Globalization Partners, or GP for short. I'm delighted to be here to moderate this discussion. I think we're waiting on one more panel member, but we'll go ahead. Just in the just to give a little bit of context for this. So from GP's perspective, we're right at the center of the global employment landscape. And essentially what we do is that we enable companies to hire people quickly and compliantly in any country around the world, okay, without the need to set up a subsidiary. So this is a topic that we're particularly passionate about. So I'm delighted to have this discussion with our panelists today. So By way of quick introduction, I'll do this on alphabetical basis. So we firstly have Andrea English, and so anybody who was tuned in earlier on will have seen Andrea's own talk, which was excellent. So Andrea is the head of people experience for Europe at NOKIA. Next, we have Birgit Maillefaud, and Birgit is a senior HR leader, a board advisor and career mentor who has worked with some global companies like P&G and Coty and Logitech. And finally, we have Sergio Caredda, who's a senior HR director for global functions at Campari. So great to have you all here, and thanks for joining us. So we have a lot to cover and not very long to cover, so we're going to jump straight in. So if we first look at some challenges around the whole sort of hybrid, remote, global sort of talent engagement piece. So I'm going to come to yourself, Birgit, and it's one thing being intentional about having a global hiring policy and onboarding policy and all that, but as with the pandemic, sometimes we're forced to look at new ways of working. So could you give us an idea of the challenges that you faced when you had to pivot right in the middle of a major HQ relocation and setup, and the circumstances around that, and what were some of the learnings that you had from that experience?
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Barry, for the introduction and for the question. And, I feel that having remote workers in your organization, as you say, requires intentional changes to process and procedures to ensure that everybody is equally enabled and empowered from day one. And so I feel sometimes that we're hearing so many different viewpoints and voices around the topic of hybrid work, because it's to a large part, based on our personal experience over the past years. And companies are at different stages in their thinking and in their implementation when it comes to hybrid or remote teams or players. So to give a concrete example and the learnings from that, as you alluded to, when I was working at Coty back in the mid 2019, being responsible for the startup of the new management HQ in Amsterdam, the team had to pivot super fast when COVID hit, and yet was able to give new joiners and those relocating a fast start. The task was to stand up and bring together the new teams and new organization in the new management HQ. And it was a critical priority at the time of the Coty turnaround plan. So probably, very different in the thinking to what we would be doing today. It was about identifying and relocating internal talent, staffing externally, and then with a big focus on a state-of-the-art onboarding process, as new people, new teams were coming together for the first time in a new location. The complexity was driven also by the fact that there was no team, there was no office in Amsterdam. The business situation was challenging, and then boom, COVID hit. And the office was ready on time, but couldn't be opened because people were stuck at borders with their families, and the regulations required to keep it closed. So we had to pivot to do the onboarding for both new joiners and people relocating virtually, basically overnight. And then with the additional complexity that, international transfers require work permits, et cetera, et cetera. So what did we do? We basically created 5 pillars, and each pillar was led by a different group. First of all, there was everything around the pre-boarding, employment contract and laptop and phone and payroll and what have you. That was done by the local team. And then we had the Coty induction days that would be all around the history, the organization, what you usually do, to bring people closer to the company and to the organization, and which we, of course, thought we would do face-to-face in the office. So we did that then virtually and in small teams to enable the networking and also the getting to know each other. That's really important during those days. And then the on-the-job onboarding, which is normally done by the manager. So we had to put more burden on the shoulders of the manager at the time. But then at the same time, we also enable them through specific training on how to create a trustful environment and enable and empower people in these specific circumstances. And then last but not least, the L&D team did a terrific job in creating a 90-day onboarding and learning journey on the Coty Academy platform. And that was really all about, self-learning, self-development, development plans, leadership, and functional training. So we had those 5 pillars, and we laid that out very clearly to everybody in the company. Everybody knew, so that everybody was on the same page. The feedback was excellent, and both from participants and from managers, and it became a signature process in the company in the future. So I think the learnings from that, what are they? First of all, how to turn a challenge into an opportunity of long-term change and really think long-term in this instance. And then secondly, as I said before, hybrid or remote teams require us to think differently. So if we're serious about it, we need to make change, we need to think differently, and we need to act differently, and adapt critical moments of truth for employees, like the onboarding, for the long term, and really make it a priority, because otherwise it will not happen. And then I feel that, the clear planning, the structured process, and also the training really helped to be equal in empowering and enabling people in the remote environment. And probably, companies that are maybe more relationship focused in their ways of working, like many tech companies, might find that more challenging, maybe. And then I think last but not least, it's a learning journey. We're all in this together. We need to test, we need to learn together, we need to learn from each other, and then be very fast and act and pivot very fast.
Okay, I mean, what an experience to go through. You wouldn't have planned it that way, but it came out. What struck me, Birgit, from that is that, what an incredible job, obviously, that your team did. You mentioned the L&D guys and so on, but is it fair to say that this was a process and procedures and a documentation play that really underpinned this? So this wasn't just some magical solution that you got a piece of tech and all of a sudden it solved all your problems. It strikes me that this was much more about that process, procedure, documentation, clarity of advice, and clarity of direction for everybody. Is that fair?
I think that's part of it, but then also, really, I think it's always teamwork. It always comes down to the team, to be able to pivot so fast, to act so fast, and to change so fast is down to a team that works beautifully together. And especially in this situation where also the team didn't come together, right? They were also stuck in their own countries.
Sure.
So I think it's a bit of both. So I think it's it's the team culture, the team collaboration, it's the documentation, but it's also the structured process and the clear communication around it. I think bringing everybody on the same page about what's possible, what's not possible, what we're going to do next, where we're still not clear, as always in these instances, communication is really critical across the organization, internally and externally. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I think there's loads there that I'd love to come back to, but I'm conscious to move the conversation on. So thanks for now, Birgit.
Thanks, Barry.
So moving on to maybe a little bit of sort of lived experiences and how to and so on. I'm going to come to yourself, Sergio, if that's okay. I want to get this quote right. It should not be an ideological approach, right? That's how you described it to me when we discussed about sort of hybrid and globally distributed teams and so on. So can you tell us firstly what that meant, right? And just in the context of Campari, which is, quite a traditional company.
Yes.
How you have been, again, in your own words, strongly experimenting with hybrid and distributed models.
Yeah, what I mean by not having an ideological view is the fact that it's not about being fully remote or being fully in the office or only one solution in between the two. And I think that many companies have been experimenting now. After the pandemic, we got into this a little bit ideological discussion. Now I think we all have been experimenting. And this is also the situation that I found within the Campari group, which I joined not a long time ago. So I've not been influencing a lot of this decision, but it's what I found out in the sense that, for example, within our IT organization, we have sometimes being able to adapt of where we found the talent. Okay, so sometimes it might be in a remote location. We have chosen to still hire talent in countries where we are present with a legal entity, because our company has a strong identity in terms of culture, especially around principle of togetherness that we want to maintain. But the idea and the experimentation went into that direction. What we found out, however, is that the principle of having fully remote roles in certain areas, for example, under technology, and we're experimenting this, for example, in supply chain at the moment, where we're also starting to have distributed talent also in other continents, maybe does not apply at the same time or at the same level in other teams, okay? One example, we have our global strategic marketing, which you could tell it's already a distributed team, because part of the team sitting in New York, part of the team sitting in Paris, part of the team sitting in Milan, but they are coordinated in sub-team and they want to work together. I want to underline this want element in the sense that even if we today do have a flexible working policy elements, we notice that this team is working more together than on average some of the others. And this is just to also mention that there needs to be an autonomy also around the team to establish choices around what can be done remotely, what can be done together, because we know that certain activities, talking to clients, some activities about innovation, interaction, creativity, need to have a lot more physical presence around that. What we can do and what we can learning is that now a lot of the work does not need to be tied into one specific location. It can happen in multiple elements. And I think this has been the great experience, even as you said, in a company that is in a pretty traditional market, and it is still working in a number of processes this way. Where probably the key element is the manager role. This was already mentioned before. And as well as the team kind of self-autonomously also connects and decides how to work. Because if they're used and if they find value in doing a lot of synchronous work, then they need to spend a lot of time of physical presence. And this is also learning around certain teams that technically is in the same building, but maybe they have learned to work a little bit more from the distance, and they are also allowing themselves to have a little bit more of remote work. So again, it's not an ideological position, the one or the other. There is one good, there is one bad, but it's about really finding the one element which ensures the performance of the people and the team, which I think it's what we need also to support as HR.
Yeah, fascinating. And so you're like, I could distill a good bit of that to go, there isn't just one size fits all.
Correct.
Those are lived experiences that you're talking about.
Yes.
There. In other words, you haven't just gone, okay, here's our mantra and our diktat. This
Correct.
is how we're doing it for all teams. So as you've described, and it's probably, maybe this would be common for a lot of the audience, that perhaps in those technology functions, it's a little bit easier to see how it could be a fully distributed or a more remote team, whereas you said that's collaborative nature of some of the other disciplines. You need to have, I think what you're saying is you need to have that flexibility to be able to, recognize that collaboration piece is really important for this cohort. This other one can function pretty well without, so it's important not to get stuck into that one size fits all approach.
Correct. And I think it's also important not to assume that just because you're in technology it can work, and just because you're in a more traditional function it doesn't. We need to go down to the team level and probably also start developing a habit of, like, I don't know, every 6 months or no, like, let's say periodically review your ways of working. Are we ready to the next step, or do we need to go back with more personal? Because sometimes it's also situational and depends on the flow of activities, the project that you're doing, etc. So that is also an element that we should consider.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And just to touch for a moment on one thing that struck me when we spoke briefly before was just describing that the culture of a camparista. And what some of your core values. I loved that phrase. I'm trying to see how we can rob that from my company. But Yeah, could you maybe just talk to us about the importance of that and how that ties into this culture of values of togetherness and so on, how that ties in with your, managing in a remote setting?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I mentioned today. It's so Campari is still a small company with a very strong brand identity, even if, of course, with growth acquisition, it has expanded into many areas in the world and also many other segments. But it has a very strong identity that you mentioned, is this Camparista. A big portion of my positive experience with Campari is entering and from day one feeling welcome as a Camparista in the organization, which also highlights this element which I mentioned before about the togetherness, which is about spending time together. You can describe it on the server as this: it's taking decision together, it's working together, it's addressing problem together. Which is also why what we are trying to avoid is, for example, even when we're looking for remote talent, we would like them to still be able to be attached to a location nearby. And we're also building our new location with this mindset of being, it's not that you need to go to the office because you're obliged to, even if in certain countries, of course, we need to respect certain rules, and this needs to be said. But it's kind of not a push element, but a pull element. So our offices need to be an attraction point exactly for this togetherness element, okay? They need to be pleasurable location. They need to be places where you can breathe also the culture of Campari. We just recently opened a new office in London, which is a prime example around this, which is, of course, a beautiful location for our customers when they're visiting, but it's also a beautiful location for our teams where they breathe the spirit of this company of being Camparista, can also be around that. Then you can question, is it just a Christmas party? Is it some activities around it? Well, there's still important elements of a culture like this. And it's not just that, it's really having a place where you can really also get in touch with the product, get in touch with our brand identity, our marketing activities and elements around this. And it is really pivotal to think, probably this culture will need to evolve. So we will need to explore how this togetherness can be explored also in a remote setting more. But you cannot ignore it, because otherwise you're also ignoring one of the important leverages also that is part of the success of this organization.
Excellent. And again, look, loads of rich material there. And if we had the rest of the afternoon, it would be great to explore that a little bit further. But,
Indeed.
But thank you for that for now, Sergio. So, Andrea, moving on to yourself, hybrid work is here to stay, as you said when we spoke sort of briefly, right? And I know you covered a lot of this in your own presentation earlier, but just maybe for a small recap, and for any of those who are viewers who missed it, can you give us an idea of how you're living that in terms of NOKIA, and I suppose your general approach, and if we can talk about learnings, maybe that's the most effective thing for now, the learnings from this new way of work.
Yeah, I think the one of the questions was also, connected to this, that, for example, how you are influencing leadership to, go hybrid and so on. I think there was one positive thing, is that our new CEO was very much in believing in hybrid, but it didn't mean that it was all without challenges. So we still needed to face that not every business groups or not every leaders believe that this is something which is going to work. So I think one very powerful thing was for us to surveying the employees and asking their view, because we had lots of very positive experience during COVID, and we wanted to understand what's the benefit for them to work from home, because it's not enough just to be efficient or gaining on efficiency, but we were also thinking it would be nice, and this was also something which we are hearing back, that it would be nice to give back of time, the time of the travel, the time of the getting to the office, and then trying to squeeze in also life next to the office hours. So surveying and listening to the survey feedback was very, very crucial and important for us. I also believe we worked out quite early on the framework, how we would like to do that, but not every details was worked out. And we already started to communicate on this when we didn't see the full picture yet, which was very good, because we could also say, you know, this is the way we want to take, this is the way we want to go, but maybe some of the details we are just going to adjust along the way. So providing hybrid work for everyone might be the way to go. As I also mentioned earlier, you know, the younger generation of colleagues were proposing that they would like to stay more or be more in the offices, which we also realized would be a very, very good opportunity for them, because they needed to connect more with the leaders, with each other. They really valued this networking element. Maybe at home they didn't have the, you know, the same setup as some other colleagues. But I think valuing this individual way of being and the individual life setup in the current place, and giving the opportunity not just to choose one way or the other, but also having the opportunity to change it. Because, you know, every 6 months or whenever there is a need for the people, there is a possibility on both ways to change the setup, whether they want to stay in hybrid, whether they want to come more often to the office. So it's a very, very, very flexible approach we gone for. And as I mentioned, not every element is perfectly worked out. But it seems to be working very well, because the people were empowered to, you know, to choose, and for the line managers also to provide this option to the employees. Another you know, challenge is that when you are in a certain setup and there are certain rules, and then immediately you have the options, all of the options, you know, which are available for you. What are you going to choose, which is going to be the best for you? So this required also some conversations, both with the employees and the managers, for them to understand you know, what's going to be the best option. Also, the managers needed to feel comfortable that they will be able to manage the employees. And I remember even, you know, having conversation with people who were already managing global teams before, saying that, yeah, but I'm managing global teams, but I really want them to be in one location at least, you know, when they are together, then they should be in one location. I said, but that's not going to help you with the talent pool. So this is something we need to explore. Why do you believe that? And how we are leveraging technology of making it happen. So if they cannot be on the same site, if they cannot come together, then how can we ensure that we are using technology well? I remember, you know, there was a time when I randomly started to call a few colleagues who were recently joining the team, and I was asking about their onboarding experience, and they said it was fantastic. It was like, my laptop arrived, my phone arrived, I got all the technical instructions how to do that. And then the first day I had a full day with meetings, someone explaining what's happening, a buddy assigned to me who is checking in with me regularly. So if we are providing all the support around that to our colleagues during the onboarding and also while they are working, then it works. And we cannot really expect that after experiencing this, people will just choose to go to the office 5 days a week. It's just not the way or that's my prediction. You know, no one knows what the future brings, but currently that's what I see happening.
Loads of interesting stuff. I'm just conscious of our time here, and we'll move some way towards a conclusion. But a couple of comments on some of the things that you've said. I think it's really important that we do a little bit back to what Sergio was saying about the different functions, and it isn't a one size fits all. I think you made a really interesting point about the stage in the career where individuals are, right? So I think that's that proper engagement, whether that's, you know, somebody early in their career. I mean, the reality is that there are a number of people out there in our organizations who, because of the pandemic, have never worked in an office. and they could have 2 years experience under their belt, and they've never actually gone into an office. So I think it's a whole new world where we're now able to give them that different opportunity. I think we need to recognize as well, and you've alluded to it there, and I think there's a theme coming through all of our conversations that, you know, understanding that culture, we all talk about it, right? And, you know, getting people on board, and that good onboarding experience is just what's going to launch probably how people are going to feel about the organization. But, and you mentioned there about that buddying system and, you know, having high frequency communications. I heard it described, I love this, about having a wraparound care, you know, wraparound care for the individual. But I think it's important that we understand that not every individual who joins our organizations is going to fully get the culture right at the beginning. And I think it's important on the flip side that we recognize that we won't necessarily always get the culture of the individual, depending on where they are, you know, right from the outset. So there's going to be some sort of cultural deltas. And I think that's where we all collectively need that, you know, that wraparound care, that real intentionality about engagement and not doing it. And again, I mentioned earlier, not just using technology to go, right, you've got all your stuff. It's about that human connection, isn't it? And so on. So anyway, that's more of a statement on what we're hearing for best practice. I want to give one quick example before we get your closing thoughts, everybody. I think that in the office type of thing, I may stand corrected on this, but I believe it was SAP who recently, they had, you know, they were getting people to come into the office with their team members on such a day a week. So everybody was in at the same time, with the intent that this was going to ultimately be the best performance and the best productivity. But what they found out was when you instead overlapped it with the friend group of those individuals and their key collaborators, that was the secret. That was the magic sauce, right? So it wasn't just let's get our teams in on those particular days so everybody's in together. It was about that friend group, and it's about that more personal connection piece. So I thought that was quite instructive and interesting. So to throw it back over to you guys, and I'll come back to you, Birgit, first. Just want to give one, maybe two takeaways for the audience when we're, you know, kind of, you know, when we're thinking about this finding and engaging and managing this globally distributed teams and workforce. So what are the one or two key takeaways you would leave our audience with? I think you're still on mute, Birgit, sorry.
Thanks, Barry. Probably I would offer two. One is around the intentionality that you already mentioned. If we don't make it intentional and we don't make it a priority, you know, we can't just think that all of a sudden remote teams and hybrid teams will come together. And it takes time and it takes learning. So I think that's one. Really make it a priority and adapt the processes and the procedures that you have around it, so that everybody, really in the idea that everybody is equally enabled and empowered. We talk a lot about productivity, we talk a lot about efficiency, etc. Yes, that's one side of the medal, but the other side is how do we make sure that everybody is enabled and empowered in the same way? That's one. And then the second one is, I think, as I said earlier, you know, it's a learning journey. So Andrea, I liked your point around, you know, making sure that we allow and then we enable people to give feedback, to give input, to bring their ideas, so that we can continuously learn from each other and improve along the way. And it'll take some time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Birgit. Sergio, I'll come to you.
Yep. Well, I think my main takeaway around this is especially treating people, both individual and teams, as adults, in the sense that they can self-organize their work in a lot of ways. And I think this is down to a lot of the messages that also Birgit and Andrea have been mentioning, leadership management. But I think this is the core element around this, which does not mean that we should not be teaching or giving learning opportunities to a lot of, especially of the younger people, about what how job works, because that is also a reality. But at the end, this is essentially, in the nutshell, the big takeaway for me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Andrea.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I agree with all of the, you know, what's been said before me. Maybe one other thing which came into my mind on the top of all of this is that we need to ask our employees as well. you know, what they will, just because we think it's a good idea, because we hear that it's out there and everyone is doing it, we need to understand their needs as well. So we need to, and we probably need to come from that point of view, you know, as the employees, whether they see it as a benefit, whether they see it as, you know, something which is adding value for them, assess whether you have the right technology, or is it something which you need to invest into, and invest in the people after that. Invest in the people just to ensure that they are able to globally collaborate going forward. Because as Birgit also mentioned, it doesn't happen just by itself, and also Sergio touched upon this. You know, we need to empower the people to do that, but it won't happen just because we say it's going to happen.
Okay, excellent. Listen, I know we've gone over time, but I think it was worth it. Lots of really valuable takeaways there. So thanks so much, everybody. Look, happy to keep the conversation, as I'm sure my fellow panelists are, keep the conversation going afterwards with any members of the audience. But for now, I'll hand back to you, Maillefaud.
Brilliant panel. Thank you so much, Barry, for facilitating. Andrea, Sergio, Birgit, thank you so much. Really, really nice insights. And last but not least, before we conclude the session, I'd like to invite to our virtual stage Dara Canterbury, Sales Engineer, Globalization Partners. So we shall be learning about Globalization's partner solution. The virtual stage is all yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me. I am conscious of time, so I'm just going to kick off by sharing my screen straight away, and we'll dive straight into it. The purpose of the GP platform is the ability to be able to manage all of your professionals in that one singular place, and allowing for access to talent across the globe, as well as allowing your workforce to work remotely in any of those regions. So I am just going to give a quick overview of some of the capabilities within the platform itself. You can see within the home screen, you get a visual representation of where you have your employees hired worldwide, and also what countries you have them based in, whether you have employees active, terminated, or onboarding within those specific regions. As well as that, you will get access to the country insights across all 187 countries that we currently go into. And this is including what it looks like to hire within those countries, what employment contracts are like, vacation days, and information on insurances and benefits as well within those countries. So again, this is all available through the platform itself, as well as what's the cost look like from a country-specific view. So again, it'll break down your employer burden. So what's the compliant cost of employment when we take in any mandatory benefits that we need to pay for within those countries, and any taxes in those countries as well. If we look at a country like France, we're going to pay someone $50,000 a year. You'll see that it's going to cost us on average about 54% on top of salary. That is just the cost of global employment within the country, when you take into consideration all the taxes and the mandatory payments that need to be made within the country. So again, you can download any of this data and you can compare and contrast against multiple different countries. When you've made a decision and you're ready to employ in a certain location, you'll be able to add a professional and create a contract of employment directly in the platform itself. How this works is we ask for the first name, last name, and email of the professional or the employee. Any additional information, any contact information, bank account information must be given directly from the employee once they've consented to privacy. Of course, for all things GDPR. Once we choose the employment country, then we will generate a dynamic contract generator, which will be dependent on the country we are going into, as every country is different when it comes to its laws and compliance. So therefore, our contract generator has to alter a little bit country to country, whether it's language specific or some legal specific differences. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and do one that I created earlier, save me some time typing all that out. So what this looks like is we'll take the initial information of the employee, and it's important to note that the employment contract is between GP will be the legal employer and this professional you're looking to hire in country. However, you have the tools to alter the details of this contract. So be able to assign direct supervisors and approvers to the professional, be able to input their job information, what the job description looks like, any working hours, and then any probationary periods. When we look at probationary periods, notice periods, and annual leave, whatever the statutory minimum is always our baseline. So it's only anything supplemental we want to add on top of that statutory minimum. We look at compensation then. You can input an annual salary plus any additional bonuses or commissions, plus any allowances that you'd like to offer the individual in that country. So whether that be telephone allowances, car allowances, transportation, etc. From a benefits standpoint then, we do partner with supplemental benefits providers globally, and we partner with the local providers in country. So you'll be able to offer that additional medical, dental, vision, depending on the country you're looking at going into. You'll also then be able to provide potential pension contributions, both from an employer and an employee standpoint. As mentioned, when we look at annual leave, you can provide the statutory or anything additional on top of that. Any notice periods or restrictive covenants can be added into the contract, as well as some information on confidentiality and IP. Once you've completed all of these steps, you will get a fully drafted up contract of employment, which can be shared internally with anyone within your company so that they can peer review it, or if you want to send it to your HR legal team. And once you've completed the contract, you'll be able to approve it, send it directly to your professional, you'll be able to sign it via DocuSign in the platform itself. Then they'll be fully onboarded and be able to report to you from their side. And I am aware I'm running over, so apologies. From the professional's view, they'll be able to get up-to-date information on when their next payroll date will be, how often they will be paid, how their pay slips are going to be delivered, as well as being able to request any time off or input any expenses directly on the platform itself. While you're managing the professional, you'll also have ability to add any of those commissions or bonuses on a monthly basis through our payroll. You can approve any of those time off requests or those expenses that have been put through. And there's multiple other features available in the platform itself, including but not limited to ability to manage your freelancer contractors. You have a full reporting suite to take advantage of. We have our GP Recruit built in, so we partner with multiple recruitment agencies worldwide to help you find the right candidate in those locations. We also integrate into multiple different HRIS systems as well. Again, we actually just went live with our Personio integration as of last week. That is all I have time for today, unfortunately. However, if you do follow me on LinkedIn, I will be giving a more in-depth demo on the 15th of December. As I know, I could only give a high-level overview today, but it's appreciate you guys having me on. It's a wonderful event you're putting on today.
Thank you so much, Derek. That was amazing. Global hiring made easy. It's literally a couple of click of buttons. So people, if you'd like to explore further, reach out to Derek and people from the Globalization team. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude today's session. And we hope to see you back in the 3 o'clock sessions, because we shall be starting with performance management on one hand and leadership reimagining on the other hand. We learned in the past 1.5 days how both topics are so critical in order to create engaging and thriving organizations. So see you all back at 3 p.m. CET. We continue our learning journey.